So what is it that you think students get out of history teaching at its best?
Well, certainly they get some things that employers would like to see. For instance, when my students do their posters, one of my students said, you know, well, first he said it was kind of fun, which is always good. But then he said, we had to do all the work we would have had to do to write an essay, but we didn't have to do an essay. And what I said to them was, yes, you didn't have to do an essay. This is really more like what you'll do in the real world. Your boss, for instance, wants you to go research a particular project. You know, you might be an engineer, you're building a bridge. You know, your boss might want you to go do a feasibility study, you know, of a bridge and a tunnel. Maybe not a full study of that, but which would be better. And so you go off and you do a lot of research and you come back and you do a 5-minute presentation. So the ability to go out, to find all of that material, to think it through, to distill it down, and then to present it to somebody who is not a specialist. So my posters, for instance, were juried, and there was a jury prize. It wasn't a lot, it was $5 a student. You know, there were 6 students in the team, that was $30, which is, you know, really not a lot of money. It was juried by people outside the class, people who hadn't taken the class. And one of the criteria was, could they understand what your poster was about? Did you give them enough information? There was one intellectually very sophisticated poster that didn't win because they felt they had walked into the middle of a conversation of which they had not hitherto been a part. So I think those kinds of skills are very important, research and presenting, because in the end, students, content is fleeting. Content's important, but the importance of an individual bit of content does not last very long. But the process by which you learn how to seek out content, to distill it, to present it to somebody else and share it in a public manner, to be accountable to both me as the teacher and to the other members of the team. So I've been having students in teams for quite a while now, and I think that's important both pedagogically, but also as preparation for working in the workplace. I think is very important. I will have students ask me, well, you know, what do we do if one of our team members doesn't pull his or her weight? And I said, well, you have a number of options, but be prepared for this to happen in the workplace too, and have a decision about what you're going to do. Because if you simply do the work for that person, plan to do the work for other people in the workplace for the next 20 years. Or have a strategy to get that person to do the work, or to make it known to superiors so that they can have a conversation with that person about their unwillingness to do their fair share of the work.
That's a great advice, because that's also about enabling them to manage work in the workplace, isn't it? And working with others in the workplace. And there's going to be nobody there like you to sort it out.
Right. Well, there will be a boss ultimately, but the boss will want to see them attempt to solve it first by themselves. And even to come up with strategies for working in a slightly dysfunctional team. I would say the other thing is the researching process, the ability to deal with complexity and ambiguity is very important in history, because we are forensic. We are almost never 100% certain of what we say. I mean, we're certain of certain things. You know, the Battle of Hastings took place on October 14th in 1066. We're about as certain about that as anything, but it doesn't make any difference and it doesn't matter. The things that we would like to be sure of is what was going through William the Conqueror's mind. We don't know that. We can't know that. We can guess, but we're never 100% certain. There are always ambiguities. We're always taking evidence from different directions. And sometimes we're trying to figure out the best path in history. What's the best explanation here? In which case we're trying to amalgamate different perspectives. So for instance, if you're trying to figure out, well, what really happened at the storming of the Bastille, you take the eyewitness reports and you have to weigh them against each other and you have to come out with one narrative. And in other cases, you're preparing the ground for negotiation between different points of view, in which you may choose one, but you also may have to represent others in a fair way. And again, I think these are workplace skills, they're social skills, they have application. And you have to present them in some kind of polished form, a report, a poster, a PowerPoint. And my students do those. My pre-service teachers do it as a lesson. They have to write up a lesson. They know that their audiences are high school students. One of the really interesting difficulties they have is trying to figure out exactly where that audience is, what they have to do to a primary source to help that audience understand it, because they're not as intellectually sophisticated yet. And so talking to different types of people, presenting things in different venues, I think that's also a real life skill that adds to employability.